I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge weeb, and as such I like to watch anime, and more often than not, I do prefer dubs over subs. Fight me in the comments. Dubs are easier to listen to, I hate reading subtitles. But if an anime is particularly good, like Spy Family for example,
一流の音楽の次は一流のアートに触れて以下略。
definitely gonna watch the sub because I'm just too impatient to wait for the dub. Since I don't speak Japanese, as you can clearly tell, I have to rely on not just translations of the original Japanese media, but more importantly, localization. Now, if you're a weeb like me, you probably already know what this is and probably already don't like it, but I still want to do a little bit of a deep dive into it because I feel like localization, which is already bad, is gonna get much worse in the near future. So I've got a couple of examples that I really want to dive into. Before we dive into these specific examples, however, let's take a look at what localization is supposed to do specifically from a professional localizer.
私は思わず I 思わず without thinking 笑ってしまった so that means I laughed and it was an accident. I shouldn't have really laughed. That's what the shimatta part adds to that. So I often translate 思わず笑ってしまった or 思わず笑ってしまう. I often translate that as like I can't help but laugh, and that expression comes up so many times in otome games. Like I can't help but smile, I can't help but laugh, I can't help but swoon. It's like it's everywhere in there. I just think that flows a lot better.
Now, as you may or may not know, localization oftentimes comes hand in hand with a weird type of censorship, especially if it's content that they intend to market towards children. And probably the best example of that is the jelly-filled donut meme. They took an onigiri, a rice ball, and called it a jelly-filled donut just to intentionally strip the Japanese culture out of the original animation to make it more digestible for Western children, which I find really frustrating. I think it is valuable and important to express Japanese culture and accurately translate that into anime intended for American audiences. We should understand very, very basic elements about Japanese culture as we're consuming the media, and to remove that I think does a disservice. Especially nowadays, it's 2022 at the time of recording this. Almost everyone who watches anime at the very least knows what a rice ball is. So this sort of cultural censorship is extremely frustrating. And just to give you a few more examples of how back in the day localization involved censorship to the point where it ruined an anime, you need look no further than the 4Kids dub of One Piece.
Oh my god, this is it. This is the worst dub of all time. It was, oh god, you know, to call it a train wreck would be a massive compliment. Their sorry excuse of a One Piece dub easily stood out, not just as their worst dub, but one of, in fact, quite possibly the worst anime dub I've ever seen.
Now, this might be a controversial opinion, but personally, I don't think every example of censorship in localization is inherently bad. And I'll give you an example of a scene from a game that was cut for the American release that honestly I kind of agree with.
Also, the Japanese version of the game included a scene where a homosexual character is drugged and cured of said homosexuality, which may be considered as, say it with me now,
gay conversion therapy!
Yep, that's gone from our stomping grounds. Yeah, it's unfortunate when entire pockets of gameplay are removed for international releases, but I mean,
gay conversion therapy!
So that's all old news, but there's a fairly new trend of not just making content more digestible and more censored for modern American audiences, but just straight up changing lines to something entirely different to the point where it completely changes the original meaning. And I despise this in particular, and I think this type of localization is going to be on the rise. Let me give you a few examples so you can understand why I'm so upset by this.
Translated yabai as Monka S today. How's your day going? For those not aware, Monka S is a Twitch emote.
The problem is it doesn't just stop at memes. We're getting to the point where the actual message of the anime is entirely changed. This one I find particularly annoying because they took the word tsundere, an insult that was thrown at one of the female characters, and changed it to making fun of the male character's fragile masculinity. You completely eradicated the entire sentence and replaced it with a weird, like, social justice commentary that wasn't needed. No one likes this. No one likes it when you insert your own opinions into an anime. You're supposed to express the anime's opinions, even if they disagree with you. That is particularly frustrating, and I feel like that's a very slippery slope to some awful behavior. Now this one I feel is particularly insidious. They translated Mato Seihi no slave as chained soldier, even though, as you clearly caught there, they said slave in the original Japanese title, and they're replacing with chained soldier, which changes the entire meaning and the entire relationship of the character. It changes the entire relationship of these characters to just go from a soldier who is required to work for you and a literal slave. That actually changes the meaning of the anime. That is genuinely insidious. You're changing the actual meaning. So hopefully you can now understand my frustration with localization and see that localization is trending towards social commentary, changing the original meaning, and just adding irritating American cultural elements that don't need to be there. This is so frustrating. Most people who watch anime just want an accurate representation of what they said in the original anime. That's why the sub versus dub debate is so heated. It's because the sub is believed to be more accurately translated to the source material because you don't have to account for changing what words to use to account for the lip flaps. It is exhausting that all we want is accuracy and all we get is bullshit.